It all starts when a familiar thought rolls into your awareness. As you grab it to examine it more closely, your imagination begins exploring possibilities and distorts that thought with what if? What if I can't do it? What if I mess up? What if it goes wrong? What if it happens again? A new thought is picked up to support the previous one, and soon enough your brain gets overwhelmed with all possible associations. As your prefrontal cortex shuts down, you enter survival mode. Your nervous system steps in by sending stress hormones to increase your energy levels. This flood is preparing your body for a fight or flight response. Your heart starts beating faster, your muscles tense up, and your senses get sharpened to prepare you to respond to the perceived danger. Except this time, there's no real danger. There's no real tiger. The burglar trying to break into your house is just a tree branch scratching the window. You have no evidence that that piece of cake will make you gain 10 pounds overnight. And that presentation you have to give at tomorrow's meeting? Well, you have been preparing yourself for that for the past week. So, are you absolutely sure you're going to mess that up? As your thinking brain comes back online, you might notice that your fight or flight response are still activated. So, what do? Shake it off. When you're in a state of high alert, your body demands movement. So, go for a brisk walk, run, do some jumping jacks, or dance in place to kick the stress out of your system. Any form of exercise can release feel-good hormones like endorphins, bringing your body back into a state of rest and balance. Do not rush this, and don't waste your energy trying to judge yourself. Once you deactivated your defense mechanism, it's time to focus on your breathing pattern. You cannot live without it, and how you breathe says a lot about your state of being. A breathwork technique that helps you to regulate and feel safe and stable is what we call the 70-30 breath. This is a belly breathing exercise where you inhale through your nose, inflating your belly first. Once your belly is filled with air, move the air up, expanding your lungs, and then release it through your mouth. Much like a wave, inhale 70% of the air into your belly and the remaining 30% through your lungs before exhaling. Do this as many times as you need or until you reach stillness between breaths. Now the real work begins. In this stillness, you can explore alternative responses to your internal self-talk. Because anxiety is not the problem. The problem is your relationship to anxiety. And if the problem is how you perceive your anxiety, then the solution becomes changing your perception of it. So, how can you change your relationship with anxiety? First, you need to understand what anxiety actually is. How do you know if you are feeling anxious? Well, you know because your mind is racing. And because your mind is racing, your heart begins to race too. And because your mind and your heart are now overworking, you feel overwhelmed and out of control. Anxiety starts in your head. It has nothing to do with what is happening in your environment and everything to do with your internal dialogue. Something outside of you may have triggered this feeling, but your perception of it determines the quality of your experience. So the first step to changing your relationship with anxiety is to stop identifying yourself with this stress signal. Even though it's hard for many of us to recognize this, you are not anxious. You feel anxiety. And you feel anxiety because you have nurtured an association between certain thoughts and specific emotions. You've created and continue to reinforce a neural pathway that results in anxiety. Perhaps you feel health anxiety because you have a memory of someone in your family dying suddenly. So you became very health conscious and are prone to catastrophic thinking every time your heart races and you believe you're going to die. Or maybe you experience social anxiety because all you see in the media is violence and suffering and highlight reels, which fuels your negative view of yourself and the world and makes you question your place in it. Whatever the case may be, anxiety stems from this habitual response of reinforcing a memory and projecting it into the future. If depression survives on memories, anxiety, on the other hand, survives on expectations. It is a form of planning, our attempt to control something we have no control over, like the future. When our minds cannot generate a default mode that feels effective, its natural tendency is to give up control and let our body's stress response take over. Do this enough times, then your fight and flight begins running on autopilot. This is what leads to chronic stress, panic attacks, generalized anxiety, and burnout. To interrupt that pattern, we need to create a new one, and we can only do this by paying attention to our own self-talk. We are often unaware of our thoughts, but because they have such a significant impact on how we feel and behave, it is crucial to start looking at what we are saying to ourselves. Pay attention to the slightest shifts in anxiety. When you notice it creeping in, stop before turning it into negative self-talk. Say to yourself, stop, and ground yourself in your environment. Where am I? What am I doing right now? Then take stock of your emotions and thoughts. How do I feel right now? Where do I feel it in my body? What thoughts am I thinking? What am I saying to myself? What is my perception of what is happening? What am I worried will happen? What bad thing do I expect to happen? Thinking about something doesn't mean that the thought is true or that it will happen. Often our thoughts are just predictions based on our previous experiences, be it real or vicarious. And it's when we over-identify with them that we're more prone to fall into thinking traps or cognitive distortions such as fortune-telling, mind-reading, or catastrophizing. And because those are the stories we have associated with feeling anxiety, the most common behavioral response when we actually feel it is wanting to escape it. This form of avoidance can be anything that you do to soothe yourself, from fleeing the situation to numbing yourself with various flavors of entertainment, sex, alcohol, or drugs. Of course, these coping mechanisms have a short-term benefit because they do make you feel better, but only while you're engaging in the behavior. Once the anxiety surfaces again, you deploy your preferred method to suppress it, teaching your brain that the only way you can tolerate anxiety is by avoiding situations, people, or emotions. And this is actually a form of torture because you will begin experiencing dread or negative anticipation when facing anxiety-inducing moments, making it even more difficult to heal your fears. Understand that anxiety in itself has no intrinsic meaning, which means your behavior is the result of your perception of what is happening to you emotionally. And that interpretation is entirely under your control. When you develop more awareness of what and where you feel anxiety, you're allowing yourself to choose how you want to go about it. So, after grounding yourself and checking in with your thoughts and emotions, consider reframing your interpretation of anxiety. If the worst case scenario came true, what would I do to cope with or handle it in the moment? What tools do I have in my emotional toolbox right now to approach anxiety effectively? How do I want to respond to it? What do I truly want to experience? Can I use my imagination to summon that feeling? What meaning do I want to give to this experience that is empowering to me? A quick example of this action is, say you're giving a presentation tomorrow, and you're freaking out, are afraid that you will forget everything, and you're just terrified at the thought that everyone will see you as the loser you are. You could say that this is your worst case scenario with the spin of negative self-talk. So what can you do to mitigate the chances of losing your train of thought? Maybe you can write down the key points of your presentation. Or perhaps if you do forget what you want to say, you can consider telling a joke to fill up the space. Being playful certainly eases the tension. It amuses your audience and it gives you time to collect your thoughts. It also makes you feel lighthearted because playfulness feels better than anxiety. And you cannot focus on your anxiety if your energy is being channeled to being playful. In this case, even self-deprecating jokes are effective coping mechanisms as a short-term strategy for managing your distress. In other situations, you may want to consider turning anxiety into excitement. Anxiety and excitement are both states of high activation in the body, but one involves a story about resistance while the other sees the future as a place of opportunities. So, if you experience anxiety in the past while giving a presentation, chances are you're going to feel anxious the next time you have to give another one. The stress response can also occur around meeting new people or feeling trapped in a large crowd. In these situations where your physical survival is not under threat, you have the chance to reappraise anxiety as excitement by flipping the script on your negative self-talk. Anxiety says, I can't give this presentation, I'm going to make a fool of myself. Excitement, on the other hand, says, I am excited for this opportunity to speak. I have prepared for this and I will give it my best. Or anxiety says, I am nervous. I am going to blow this job interview. How am I going to pay my bills? While excitement says, I am pumped for this opportunity. I have the right set of skills, and even if this is not a good match, I can ask for feedback and nail it in the next interview. And in the meantime, I can reorganize my budget and get a job to keep me afloat. Or anxiety says, I feel like crap today, and the day hasn't even started. While excitement says, I woke up feeling sad, so that's definitely my cue to take things slow, be kind, and take care of myself. Sometimes excitement is not the most effective approach to an anxiety-inducing circumstance. Nevertheless, every time you feel anxiety creeping in, you can stop yourself before you turn it into negative self-talk. Anxiety is often triggered by uncertainty and lack of control, and this is the point where you still have control over your responses, but it's not the only one. Most of the stress, anxiety, and overwhelm many of us experience, particularly the non-life-threatening kind, comes down to our lifestyle choices. Our thoughts and emotions are constantly communicating with each other, feeding off of each other's patterns to create our perception of our environment and inform our behaviors. So a good starting point may be to reflect on your habits and how they may affect your mental and emotional well-being. Introducing changes to your lifestyle can sometimes feel like such a mountain to climb, especially nowadays. Ever since the pandemic, I feel like time is accelerating, because it kind of is. I just gave up trying to keep track of it because whenever I attempt to catch up, somehow I get overwhelmed, like life is unfolding faster than my nervous system can keep up with. So if this resonates with you, know that you're not alone. And if the idea of overhauling your entire lifestyle seems like too much, then zoom in on your life and make it just about today. And if that still feels like too much, then zoom in even further and make it about this moment. What can you do in this moment to take care of yourself? Often our minds tend to make changing our patterns harder, bigger, and more complicated than needed. In reality, there are small steps you can take that will reduce almost by 80% the stress you feel, and they all start with the basics: movement, rest, and nourishment. Movement refers to any form of daily exercise like taking care of your garden, going for a walk, or a run around the neighborhood, doing some yoga or tai chi, dancing to your favorite song, or even playing with your kids. It doesn't matter how long you do it, it matters that you do it. It's hard to be consistent when you're not enjoying yourself, so whatever exercise you choose to do, make it regular and make it fun, because this will help you build confidence in yourself, all the while reprogramming your habitual fight or flight response. Another way to reprogram stress is to rest. Since your body is constantly tense, find ways to cultivate calm in your life. Take practical steps to improve your sleep hygiene by setting up a relaxing nightly routine. Keep your bedroom dark and cool and avoid all forms of stimulants right before bed. These can be any form of screen time and sleep disruptors such as noise, large meals, tea, and caffeine. Instead, try to incorporate relaxation techniques such as gentle stretching and deep breathing to relieve tension, and consider reading a book or listening to soothing music. And on that note, reflect on how you nourish yourself throughout the day. Nourishment speaks to any form of sustenance, be it physical, emotional, intellectual, and spiritual practices. We can share a few habits that are proven to support your mental and emotional health. Be in nature, or at the very least, find a patch of grass and bury your feet in it while bathing in the sun for a few deep breaths. Stay hydrated and help your body flush out toxins. And speaking of water, nothing will put you right back into your body like taking a cold shower, so give that a try. Just remember to breathe slowly and breathe deeply. Eat more whole foods. Get your body the fuel it needs. Start a meditation practice, just 1 minute a day, before you even get out of bed or right as you go to sleep. Journal your thoughts, especially when your mind is racing. Be open and honest about your headspace with others, and reinforce your boundaries when you need to. Just remember to ask for consent before unloading to ensure those you care about have the mental and emotional bandwidth to support you. Reserve quiet times in your day to unwind and daydream. You can also reflect on your daily habits and imagine what would your ideal patterns look like. Get clear on that vision and then consider applying some incremental changes towards it. This can include engaging in projects to support your community, because worrying doesn't help your mental health, but taking action does. And if you're dealing with social anxiety, you'll find a very useful channel in the description that you should definitely check. No affiliation, just another great resource. Avoid stimulants like caffeine and alcohol. Reduce your social media exposure. Turn off your notifications, keep your phone on silent, limit your screen time and overconsumption of news, apocalyptic movies, and violent shows. Cut toxic people and things out of your life, and keep your environment clean and decluttered. Please follow Baz Luhrmann's commencement speech advice and don't compare yourself to others. Sometimes you're ahead, sometimes you're behind. The race is long, and in the end, it's only with yourself. You are unique, and this is your journey to figure out what works for you. So take it one step at a time and see what inspires you and what you're curious about trying and experimenting with. Changing your habits can play a significant role in changing your relationship with anxiety. However, some patterns are so ingrained that disrupting them requires additional deprogramming. In this case, consider different alternatives to supplement your lifestyle changes and desire to feel more secure and in control, such as planning for upcoming events. This is not an invitation to catastrophize and play out all the worst possible outcomes, but more about doing what you can to feel and stay confident in scenarios that make you uncomfortable. This can be something like writing down all the things you need to do the next day or journaling your worries at the end of the day. Consider therapy. Cognitive behavioral therapy and eye movement desensitization and reprocessing therapy, EMDR for short, are really helpful in processing unpleasant memories, thoughts, and feelings related to trauma. Another powerful stress relief tool is tapping, or EFT. EFT stands for Emotional Freedom Technique, and it's a combination of Chinese acupressure and modern psychology, whereby tapping on specific meridian points while you focus on the cause of your stress, you can activate your rest and digest nervous system response and reduce anxiety. If you're curious about it, I'll leave you a link for another great channel on the subject. Finally, developing a mindfulness practice is one of the most powerful habits to soften anxiety, because it focuses on understanding the association between thoughts and feelings and how to interrupt and change these connections to achieve better mental and emotional health. And you need to look no further than this video's description, where you can access a complete course on mindfulness available on this channel if you want to try it. Keep in mind that something that worked for one person might not work for you, but that doesn't mean that nothing works for you. As your needs change and your values evolve, so too your habits. Life is about knowing which habits to employ at the right time to help you get the most fulfillment out of your experience. And remember, no goal should your quality of life get worse on your way to pursuing it. My name is Liz, and if you're new to this channel, I invite you to check out our Emotional Wellbeing series, where we offer power-up tools and perspective tuning so you can expand your consciousness and get better at feeling your best. And until next time, have a good week.